Hello, I'm Alex Gittings from Opsmill. I'm a solution architect working with our community and customers, and one of the maintainers of the new VS Code plugin that we have, the VS Code extension. Today, I'll be talking about why we have the VS Code extension and how it can help in the development of your environment, from schema building to generating other things like generators and so forth. Feel free to ask any questions during the session and I'll be able to answer while I'm on here. Okay, so I have a repository open here in VS Code. This is linked to a Infrahub instance that we have loaded, that I have loaded on my local machine. We are using the demo data center environment that we have publicly available on GitHub. So any code references, you can double check this in the Opsmill Infrahub demo DC fabric and clone this or use it to experiment and test if you need. So we have built the Infrahub VS Code extension, and we originally started this at a company offsite where we split into groups and did hackathons, a hackathon, and I was a member of a team that chose this to do, and it's made it out into the world now so others can use it. It's available on the VS Code marketplace, so you can just search Infrahub and you'll be able to see. And there's a quick overview of the different things, but I'll cover most of those as we're on the session today. So let's go and have a look. So I've got this repo open in VS Code. I'm going to go to my extensions on the left-hand side and just type Infrahub and then install. So it is installed, and when it is installed, you see this little otter icon on the left-hand side here, just above Python. Now I'm going to bring it up a little bit because it adds some more detail to the VS Code window. So why did we build this? Infrahub is a mixture of schemas, a data management platform that you can provide your own schemas. So to be a user of Infrahub, or I guess a developer user of Infrahub, you have to develop schemas, generators that are used to apply business logic to the data, build artifact generation, so taking that data, performing a query against it, and then using the GraphQL and the rendering capability of Infrahub to provide configs. So a lot of the data is provided within a text file or Git repository. So there's a lot you need to do within a code, and that's imported into Infrahub. We can see that here in the integrations. If we look at Git repositories, what we can do is add this repository in, so it synchronizes against the repository we have, like demo DC fabric. This is just running locally at the moment, so I haven't synced the repository yet, but we could when we get into that. But I don't need it to show the functionality of the VS Code extension. So when you get the VS Code extension and we click the little Opsmill icon, you won't have a server there by default. I have a server defined because in my settings, in the Infrahub settings, there's two main settings. There's Infrahub VS Code schema directory. So this is to tell the extension where to look for schemas. And we've used our default as the folder schemas. And there's also servers. This is a JSON. Just in the settings, you can edit it and you can add your own servers. You can add multiple. So I have an example here. If I uncomment it and look on the left hand side here, we see the demo fabric, the demo infrahub has been added on the left-hand side too, and it's red because there's a connectivity issue. So I'm just going to uncomment that for now. Just within this settings, you need to provide a name, the address of where to connect to, so mine's localhost, and then your API tokens, which is good. And then in here, if you don't need to provide your clear text API token, you can also use environment variables, which I'm showing here. Just have to put a $sign and in brackets env and then your infrahub token environment variable that you're using. So it's just an example on what it is there. So when you have saved that, that's all the settings we have at the moment in this iteration of the VS Code extension. So I can exit out of there, and we'll be able to see the infrahub servers that are loaded. So when you have the API key, we are able to see the branches that are part of that infrahub instance and what's the main branch. For example, see main is default here. We provide some other options here to be able to manage branches. So I can go and create a new branch. Let's call that live stream. I can enter. Do I want to synchronize with Git? No. And then it will prompt me to create it. This will use the API to create a new branch in Infrahub, which will replicate the schema and allow you to add new data to that branch. If I just go to Infrahub now, I can see that we do have that branch in Infrahub now to be able to make changes to if we need. I can also go in there and delete that branch if needed. So get the life cycle of branch management in here. Previously, you would either have had to go to the UI of Infrahub or the command line to be able to run infrahubctl branch create, for example, to create a branch or delete a branch, or just be able to see the branches that are available without pulling up the UI. So it's very handy we can do it all in one platform. We don't have to context switch between the code editor and the Infrahub platform on the UI. Next down, we see the Infrahub schema. So we parse the schemas directory, or the directory that's saved within the settings, and we show that in here, and we provide some capabilities of being able to see what nodes there are, whether there's generics, for example, and navigate to each one. So we can see there quickly what nodes and generics we have, and able to see them pretty clearly and navigate to them, the relevant. So it can be quite handy if you've got really big schemas and want to be able to navigate between them, which can be very handy. So let's have a look. I'm just going to minimize that. The options we have here, the command options, are the ability to do check and pushing. So I'm just going to create a branch here saying live stream again. And what we can do is in infrahubctl, the command line utility, we have the ability to check our schema and be able to see if there's any, and also load the schema. In here, we can do the same. We can do check schema. We can select the instance that we've defined in our extension. We can select the branch to check it again. It will use the infrahubctl command line under the hood. So it will go and run a command and do schema check in the specific file with the specific branch, and it says there's no diff. If I want to load the schema, I can do the same and load that into the schema. It says it's loaded, so there we go. If I make a change for any reason, so if I change the, let's say I add a new parameter to a device, let's say, we can see that easy by going here and then going to the node infrahub device. Perfect. And I can just say, for example, name test kind text required optional true. So I'm just adding a text field called test to a device. Now what I can do is go and check that. I can check it against our live stream branch. It will say that it's changing the infra device node and adding a new attribute. I can then go and load that to the branch, and then I will go and double check in the UI just to show what that achieved. Perfect. So if I go refresh in here, navigate to one of my devices, we'll see a new attribute in here called test. And if we go to the main branch, that test attribute is not there. So branching working perfectly, and the extension loading the correct data. Now, it can also be quite challenging when you have very large schemas, in that you want to be able to have the ability to navigate quickly between inheritance or to a relationship pair. So we've also provided the ability to do go-to definition. So I can, I'm just pressing Command on my keyboard, and I can click that and it will navigate to that generic device where it's inheriting from. If I find a relationship, I can see peer, I can command click on that and it'll go to the peer that we're trying to peer with in that relationship. It allows it very easily, or you could right click and go to definition. It allows navigation to be a lot easier when working with schemas. Another big one that we wanted to achieve is to provide the ability to do provide the YAML language server without having to be able to define it at the top. So at the top of the YAML definitions, the schema files, previously we had to put in the infrahub schema for the language server to be able to interpret that. And we had to comment it out, and this is using the YAML extension. However, we can see that it's loaded the schema. I can click it at the top here and it takes us there. However, if we notice this file here without it is doing the same, there's no definition needed, and that's because the extension is handling, it knows where the schemas live, it knows that it's a infrahub schema file, and it's going to automatically associate that schema file with the correct schema. And yeah, we can see it's correctly working. So if I go to this one, for example, and I go to generics, if I just do, if I were to add a new one, and I think it's control and space, we'll see all the, you'll be able to search through, or you could have all completion, so it's name or namespace, namespace, and there's auto population there, so you can just tab it. Very handy when you want to develop schemas, to be able to have that language server to help you out. When you do have a schema, feel free to ask any questions. Thanks, Danny. Life of luxury. Yes, it is. This was specifically actually requested by Steinsley, is that the ability to provide an outline for schema files specifically. When they get quite large, you can have a lot of information in there. For example, this one's like 400 lines long. We can see easily if it is a YAML file and it is an infrahub schema file, we can see on the outline we provide the infrahub information, the generics, what generics we have. So we got infra generic device. If you click that, it will navigate you straight there. But also if you open that up, we can see the attributes, you can see the name attribute, and you can navigate like this throughout it. Previously, the default YAML one was there, which was more verbose and harder to use, because it shows you the index of the list item instead of the name of the node or the generic. So we provided a Infrahub specific one to be able to navigate through and see the different things, making it much more easy to navigate through. Perfect. So we've talked through how to add a server, create branches and maintain lifecycle of branches. We haven't yet got merging and things in here yet, but they can come soon. We just need to provide the correct buttons to add that. We've talked through the schemas and being able to check and load schemas with your different branches, and that will use your environment, your current loaded environment. If you have any issues with this, it will throw an error, but you just have to set your Python project environment, and then it knows where to look for our command line utility. And at the bottom here, we also have a tree view that allows us to be able to parse the infrahub.yaml file. So anyone that's worked with Infrahub will have seen these before. It is a specific YAML file that's in the root of the directory, so that when it's imported into Infrahub, Infrahub can know where definitions are provided, Ginger2 transform, generators, queries, all things like that. So I can go and minimize those. We can see check definition, Python transforms, queries. And in this file here, we parse a lot of that for you. So we parse the Ginger2 transforms. We'll show you what transforms there are, so you can easily navigate to them. And in future, we'll be able to add specific commands to these. We don't have them yet, but it's on the roadmap of being able to, for example, trigger a Ginger2 transform by just pressing like a play button. At the moment, it allows you to go and navigate to it. But we will have the ability to trigger the rendering of a transform or an artifact definition. So we've got parsing for those at the moment. The one that we have fleshed out more is the queries. So in the queries, we have a number of queries, and these are to define where in Infrahub it needs to look to be able to find a GraphQL file. So previously, to work with GraphQL, you had to do a few steps. You had to potentially go into the UI, you had to go into the GraphQL sandbox and provide information and navigate through the schema to build a query. Now we have the ability to, one, define the query in the infrahub file. We're allowed to edit that. If we click this button here, it'll take us straight to the GraphQL file for that file. And also, we have another video we released on YouTube, I think, that will show you some more information about how to get autocomplete on these GraphQL files, which would be quite good. So we have that. And the next one is the ability to press play. So we can test out this query without leaving Infrahub or without leaving VS Code, and you'll be able to see what information has returned back from the GraphQL query. So we're going to see there's a few devices here. I'm specifically querying devices. However, if I go to Infrahub, I'll just get a device name. Copy that. If I want to get device info that has a bit more, so if I look at the file, it's the GraphQL is actually asking for some parameters, mainly a device name. So if I press play now, the extension understands that some variables are required to be able to run this query. It's asking us for the input parameters, and these will be for whatever's defined in there. So I'm going to put my host name. It will ask us what instance of Infrahub to run it against, and then you can select the branch you would like to run it against. And we can see here the variables that were passed through and the response of that query. So we can easily test without having to leave VS Code the GraphQL query. It's quite nice. We're trying to make it easier so that you don't have to keep on going between the UI, CLI, and the code editor as much as possible. There's much more to add. Feel free to ask any questions or any features, for example. We can talk through them if you have any ideas. Okay, so we've talked through a bunch of those. So what else do we have? We have provided some documentation. So if you go to docs.infrahub.app and go to tools and SDK, there is a VS Code one in there. And it will show you how to get started, how to execute queries, manage branches. One thing that I'm going to finish up on is the snippets. So we've provided some helpers with the extension so that if you're creating, let's say, a Python file for a transform, I'm going to call transform.py. If you start typing infrahub, we have the ability to automatically populate a recommended the kind of boilerplate for these different types of things. So we have checks, generators, infrahub run, which is the ability to do infrahub kind of script runs in the CLI, just generates those, and transforms. So if we load a check, for example, I'm just going to press tab on this or enter. It will ask, okay, what do you want the name to be? We can change this to check pop ASN, for example. Next, what query to use? We can put pop.GraphQL. And then if I, the auto suggestion got me there, and then you can add your validation logic just into the end here. So it's quite easy to check. You have the data available to be able to do the check on. If we want to do the same for a generator, we can name the generator, put the information in there about what you want to generate. And we pass some key things in there. There is run, which allows you to do the run. So I could actually run this now. So I've just saved that, and then I could do infrahubctl --help. And then we can see in infrahubctl there's a run command. So infrahubctl run, and then I could do transforms and then transform. If I run that, we can see, okay, it's running against this branch. It is none, but if I then specify branch equals test, where are we? Okay. There we go. Test. We can see they printed out that argument that was passed to it. Infrahub transform is the last one, which will accept a transform class name, a query, and then again put you to the end of it. Perfect. Is there any other snippets I'm missing? Don't think so. Oh, there we go. There's one more. So in Infrahub, we have the ability to add object files. So I'm just going to put that in my root directory. And I can do devices.yaml. And in here, we have the ability to load objects into Infrahub when a repository is synced, for example, or via the CLI, these Infrahub object files, we call them. And this provides the key boilerplate to be able to do that. So for example, in here, I could do infra device and then specify, okay, we want the name to be Bob and the next parameter, so on and so forth. And every time the repository is loaded into Infrahub, as long as you have the objects defined in your infrahub.yaml file, it will load this data. So we just provide a boilerplate to work on that. We are looking into how we can better populate this and have auto completion based on this, because object files are very schema driven. So for example, if there is a name you can pass name, but then there might be another attribute, and it would be good if we could have auto completion on that. So we're just looking into that at the moment. So any questions? That's a quick overview of what the VS Code extension does, how it's helpful. As we can see, we've hardly gone to the actual UI to do much, to add branches, to check schema. It allows us to be a bit more developer friendly with the development workflow without having to navigate between the platforms, VS Code and Infrahub. Any questions for the last few minutes? For anyone, while if any questions come in, while that is going, we also have the ability to initialize a repo that came out quite recently. And this is the ability to, for anyone getting started with Infrahub, it's a good way to kind of bootstrap your repository and have the file structure that you kind of see here. So you can say Infrahub infrahubctl repo repository. And I can specify a location. So I can specify, okay, in test, I don't know, 6. And what will happen is that it will ask me for the name of my new Infrahub repository. So I can say this repository is for customer X. Oh, I spelled it wrong. No, I didn't. And I'll say, do you want to enable support for Infrahub object files? I can say yes or no, and it basically asks a bunch of questions. Do you want to support generators? Yes. The data transforms. I'm just going to say yes for everything, and it will create a directory. Now, if I go to that, I think it was temp test 6. Just open that in my Visual Studio. Yes, I trust them. We can see that, like, for example, it will load the extensions that are required. So it will recommend that you install the Infrahub VS Code extension automatically. It will have a very basic schema to get started with. And you can see, although this is not needed anymore with the extension, it's working. It'll pass the schemas file, so I can start testing automatically because I've got a local instance what is going to be run here. So it's a good way of getting started with an instance is with the repositories to use the infrahubctl repository init command, which is very handy. So I see, is there a minimum version compatibility? Oh, that's good question. We do have a minimum version. We recently lowered it though because we're not using anything specific. Originally, when we released the VS Code extension, we just went with whatever VS Code recommended in their kind of extension bootstrapping tool. We've since lowered it because other VS Code like products like Cursor, they use the same kind of VS Code engine under the hood, which was on a different minimum version. So we have lowered it. The current low version is, it might say in here, no, it doesn't. But if we go to the repository, I'll be able to tell you. Package.json. There we go. Engines. So 1.99 is the current minimum version. Yes, it does work with other Visual Studio code forks. Yeah, like Cursor I mentioned, we did lower the minimum version to work for a customer to use it with Cursor. But if you have any issues, let us know, and we can test against older versions and make sure everything works and lower it if needed. As I say, when we did release it, we went with the recommended. We're at time now, but if you want to message us in the community, feel free to suggest some improvements or feature requests to the VS Code plugin. We're happy to indulge and get them in if they make sense.